Hello and welcome to another episode of Steelfur Speaks. I am Steelfur, aka Finbar, London-based TCG player and content creator. Here today to talk to you about the exciting topic. We have the first set of, we won't call them leaks, but certainly previews for Outsiders coming at us live from the calling, where some of these cards were available as a promo pack. And other of these cards were available on the prize wall in sort of cold foil token form. We're going to run through what those are, but as a bit of a reminder, so if you haven't been following the Outsiders news, I mean, you're watching this video, so you most definitely have been following the Outsiders news. We are here to talk about Outsiders. Outsiders is going to be a really interesting set. The important thing, one of the important things to note about Outsiders is that there's kind of like a refinement going on here of the Tales of Aria draft format, where we had like two different draft archetypes for each class, Earth and Lightning, and here we have 6 heroes. So this set is going to end up drafting quite similarly to Tales of Aria, in my opinion. You're going to have 2 sets of ninja cards. One is going to lean more towards Katsu. The other is going to lean more towards Benji. And you're going to be able to draft some generic good ninja cards and then pivot between Katsu and Benji, depending on what your deck is giving you. And the same with the other heroes. So you're going to get these little options, and you're going to have a bit more range. Now, interestingly, of course, there is a... Sorry, no. That's I was going to say there is another hero here, but this is just an adult and a young one. So we've got this really interesting draft archetype, and I think this is going to be closer to Tales of Aria than Uprising. Maybe one of these will come out of the table as a really strong aggro deck like Fi was and just blow everyone out of the water, or a really strong control deck like Icelander was and just beat everyone. That I have a lot of faith that this is, what LSS are doing is essentially refining their drafting strategy to try and figure out how it works with a hero-based game every set, and they seem to be doing some interesting things, so I'm kind of willing to give them some leeway. It has limitations, the hero-focused game. One of those is the hard difficulty of making cards splashable. Whereas a game like Magic can just say, well, if you want to take some red cards, take some red cards. You just add some mountains in. It's easy. You can't do that when cards are locked to certain heroes. And even if those cards weren't locked to certain heroes, the fact is that a lot of these cards work with a synergy created by that hero. So even if they were available to other heroes, they wouldn't necessarily be good, right? So in a draft set with arrows, there's no point in Katsu taking an arrow because he's not going to be able to want to play it anyway. So, hero-based games struggle with limited formats, and it's interesting to see they keep innovating. Currently, of course, the only 3 heroes we know in Outrising are, of course, Azalea, Katsu, and Benji. It's interesting to see Azalea and Katsu come back without any changes. Kind of very strange, I would say, to me. I feel like I've said this a few times, and I'm gonna stick on that. I feel like Azalea's ability is fundamentally bad. And I know there are people out there who love Azalea. I'm not here to rain on your parade. I just feel like the amount of hoops that it makes you jump through to get dominate, but only on a specific type of card, and you have to know the top card of your deck, because if it isn't an arrow, then what are you doing? There's just so many hoops, and I feel like all the stuff they have to put in to make the ability work would have just been better if they hadn't had this ability and had a better look, let's just look at simple abilities like something like Benji, right? Attack action cards with 2 or less can't be blocked. Easy. First time your attack action control hits, your next hits +1. It's just so easy, right? Katsu is a bit more complicated, but we have heroes like Fi, and I'm not saying every hero should be simple. That's not what I'm saying. In fact, I fundamentally disagree with that. I would go for a Katsu level of complexity every time, where it tells you how to build your deck, but gives you lots of flexibility. But I'm saying that when you have... Azalea has, 3 caveats? So, firstly, you have to have a card in your arsenal. Second, you have to have an arrow on the top of you have to have a card on the top of your deck that you want in your arsenal. Third, it has to be an arrow. it's just a rough ability, and the reward for that is dominate, which is not actually that good if you think about it in terms of the game, right? Bravo could just pay 2 resources and give pretty much any attack actually has dominate. So I'm surprised to see Azalea come back. I would have expected when we saw Azalea that it would have been a different ability on Azalea, but it is what it is. Katsu's good to come back as he is. It's very interesting that we're getting 2 Ranger heroes in this set. And it's interesting that both of those Ranger heroes are being reprinted as adult as well. Because you can see, like, with the design of this set, you could kind of see the 3 main heroes of a set being Katsu, who has an adult and a young hero, Azuri, who has an adult and a young hero, and Riptide, who has an adult and a young hero, and then Azalea, Arachne, and Benji just being thrown in for draft options, right? And remember that Arachne is going to have a different ability. But with Azalea also having an adult hero, it kind of raises the question is, like, which is going to be the main Ranger hero of the set, and who's going to get the most support? Now, I personally, I've already said I don't really like Azalea's ability, hope that Riptide has a really interesting ability. They've said he's kind of trap-focused. And I'm really hoping that he gets the majority of support in the set, and Azalea just gets some arrows to make her happy. Like, I want them to be innovating with this. I don't really want to see more of this. And look, I'm going to get hate from the Azalea cult. That's fine. I just think that we've proven that this is just too many hoops to jump through, and I'm hoping they can give Rangers something interesting and different here to spice things up a little bit. Right? That's where I'm going with this. It is also just interesting to note that, like, Azuri changes her border. She clearly grew up in Mysteria, and for what it's worth, I absolutely adore this art. Mysteria is the most beautiful part of Wraith. That's just my take on it. Why Katsu decided to leave, don't know. But she obviously then went to the pits and is now living there happily as an assassin. So, more power to her. So on to the previews. I'm not going to talk about the Tome of Codex and Frailty because I feel like that's been out for a while, so it's slightly less interesting. But obviously just previewed over the weekend, we have Death Touch. Death Touch, really, really interesting card. So Assassin Ranger can't be played from hand, so only Banish or Arsenal. If there's a way to play this from Banish, that would be really cool. The art, Plague Doctor with a greatsword, tomes, potion. I love this. This is a D&D character I played once. Who was a poison-focused ranger who, like, basically shot syringes of poison at people. It was really awesome. So, 1 for 6, really great rate. 2 defense, we kind of expect that now. Can't be played from hand, so it does require some setup. And really, whether this is good or not depends on the tokens. So you get a Frailty, Inertia, or Blood Pox token. We have, however, seen 2 out of 3 of these. So if we focus, we have Bloodrot Pox here. Bloodrot Pox, at the beginning of your end phase, destroy Bloodrot Pox, then it deals 2 damage to you unless you pay 3. So remember, you're giving these tokens to your opponent. So this could actually be a 1 for 8. I mean, that's pretty good in terms of rate. 1 for 8 that can't be played from hand. But even if your opponent pays the 3, I mean, that's a really powerful effect. Damage is damage, so your opponent might not want to pay for this. They'll just take 2 damage. But if we're thinking in terms of, like, your opponent can't take that many 1 for 8s, and assumedly this isn't the only thing you're doing with your turn, right? You might have a way to give something go again, especially if you're playing against a deck that isn't blocking, like Fi. You're going to be playing Death Touch, you might just Snapdragon Scalers it, or you use your boots. And then what? They haven't blocked. You use your boots. You're pretty safe against Fi if they don't block you and you pop your assassin boots. So you just play that card. And then suddenly you're doing 1 for 8 and then you're doing something else. And you're looking at pumping out some pretty serious numbers against Fi. Now, obviously, you're not going to do that through Fi's power turn. If he's coming at you for like 26 damage, you probably need to block with your whole hand. But Fi does have off turns where he only threatens 10 damage. And if you can come in and threaten 13 or 14 back off 1 card from your arsenal and something else, then you're actually in a pretty good situation. And Fi is not going to be able to pay that cost with the current deck. So it's kind of interesting. This is a card from someone's hand or damage. And if we look at something like Infect and Spike with Blood Rot, where I could potentially play a 0 for 6 and get 2 of these, then suddenly I'm spending 2 cards as a 0 for 10. and whatever stealth does. We'll talk about what stealth possibly does in a minute, but you know, assassin is said to have the best attack reactions in the game, and there's two in this spoiler set that both give what I would consider really, really powerful tokens to the opponent, right? So, you know, this isn't disruption. I mean, this is damage, optional disruption. Your opponent gets to decide, so that's not amazing. But the fact that it's just adding extra damage on top for free on what are already sort of decent rate attacks. I mean, imagine playing a blue of this. It's a 0-for-1 that blocks 3. It has stealth, which will be something that helps it hit, and you can give it +3 for nothing. So you're playing a 3-block blue, which can do 3 damage if it hits, and you can buff it with these cards. I mean, that seems really good to me. And also, this can target any card with stealth, so there will be cards that aren't this that also have stealth that maybe apply other debuffs that you want, and the other tokens, and obviously having those gives you a lot more flexibility for control. So this is Frailty. It's really hard to read. We can kind of see the art, but it is really hard to read, so I'll just read it out. Your attack action cards played from Arsenal and weapon attacks this turn get -1. At the beginning of the end phase, destroy Frailty. Right? So you, with this one card, we don't know what Inertia does anymore, but I imagine it'll be... I don't know, actually. I have no idea what Inertia could be, because Inertia to me is like forcing your opponent to attack, or they have to keep going, or something like that. So I don't know. But you're looking at this, you can either, when this hits, choose to give all of your opponent weapon attacks -1. So really good against Katsu, Dory. You know, this is probably only a rare if it's a promo. It's not going to be a majestic, which is crazy power creep for a rare. But I think this Death Touch can't be played from hand line is very strong. Is very, like, not strong, controlling. You know, it's gonna limit this card quite a lot. So that's probably where the balance comes in. I think it'll be a lot harder to play around than people think. But that, you know, this is a very good control tool for giving you different options against Ranger or Ninja, or, you know, just opening the door for multiple choices, right? So then we have basically the equivalent of the other two, but with we're mostly just looking at the art here because it's so easy to say what they do. You know, this is whenever it hits create a frailty token, target attack with stealth get +3, and when this hits, get a frailty token. So it's the same as these, but it just is for frailty instead of the Bloodrot Pox. So you can kind of choose to build your deck with different levels of control tools. We'll talk about that in a second. Oh no, we do have Inertia token. Here we go. Okay, so Inertia is, at the beginning of your end phase, you destroy Inertia, then put all cards from your hand and arsenal on the bottom of your deck. I missed this last night when I was opening up all these images. And then obviously you have Sedate and Spike with Inertia. I feel like we've seen a lot of the Assassin cards so far for this set. We've seen 6 so far, so, you know, and these are commons and rares, so we've actually seen quite a few of the cards. And can I say the art is actually great? Like, he's jumping in there. So there you have the third control tool. All cards from your hand and arsenal on the bottom of your deck. We've seen this effect before on some Ranger cards, but it hasn't really been appreciated because, well, there are better Ranger cards and it just didn't really work in the deck. But it's very powerful effect. Like, lots of decks require setup or want to keep a critical card in hand, and just the ability to get rid of someone's arsenal is very powerful. So, like, we're looking at this Death Touch tool in a whole new light, because 3 different control options on one card, all dependent on what you're playing against. Do I need to, against Dory, give her -1 on all of her weapon attacks? Do I need, like, that person has been holding his arsenal for 4 turns. It's probably something really nasty I don't want to see. Okay, then let's make a frailty token. It's just such a good card, and I think the only real question is how awkward is this? I personally feel like this card may be too awkward just due to that line, but there's nothing wrong with doing a bit of setup. You know. So let's talk next. So we've seen all these Assassin cards. They're quite fun. We can get rid of all of those. I will be playing Assassin, very likely, in the new set. So we've got a Ninja card and we've got a Ranger card to talk about next. The Ranger card, I think, is incredibly interesting design-wise. If you have Opt, it's great. The art is fantastic. I mean, the art's always fantastic. One of the strongest things about Flesh and Blood is the art. Mark Poole always does a good job as well. But this is interesting. So a quiver can be equipped in a weapon zone in addition to a bow. So this is like new design area again. I mean, LSS, one thing you can't say like about them is that they're stagnant. They are always innovating, and they should be. Their card game is only 3 or 4 years old. They can't afford to be stagnant. But it is very interesting to see this level of innovation. So you can now equip a quiver alongside your bow. So you don't need a one-handed bow or something like that. And all this does is try and smooth out the problem with bows. The problem with bows being, I don't have an arrow, what can I do? And this is just saying, well, look, maybe there's an arrow on the top of your deck. Now, I will say that, like, this doesn't feel powerful to me because, I mean, obviously, if you're playing a ranger, you're playing a lot of Opt. And this card is really good with Eye of Ophidia because you can pitch the blue and Opt the top 2 cards, make sure there's an arrow there. But for 3 resources and a once per game effect, like, maybe it should just put the card into your arsenal even if it's not an arrow. Now, that might be too strong, but my point is, like, this is 3 resources, like, for a potential arrow, depending on how much Opt you have. And we might see a lot more Opt in this set. Opt with Go Again, for example, would be perfect in this sort of situation. But it still feels like it's a very expensive effect for a 1 per game, item. Now, I will say it does lose some of its cost effectiveness because it is a free slot that Ranger get access to and no one else does, right? So if you look at a free card like Mask of the Pouncing Lynx, which will get you any attack you want and can often be the source of 6, 7, 8, 9 damage, that is free because it takes your head slot. It takes your head slot over Crown of Providence, Mask of Momentum. As a core equipment slot, it can be a lot more powerful while also being free with a conditional on hit effect. This being a non-conditional effect, well, I mean, it has to be an arrow, but you're not triggering this unless you're desperate or there's an arrow. But also not taking up a slot. You can just play it whenever you like. That means that it does have to have a cost. It's just the 3 cost is a bit of a question mark. It kind of, as I say, depends on how much Opt is available. Because if there's a lot of Opt available, then this becomes perfectly healthy and normal. So, I think this will be interesting. People will put it in. It literally costs you nothing to include this in your Ranger deck. You will put it in. You will have blues. Every so often, you'll either be desperate or you'll know there's an arrow up there and you will use it and it will work to your favor. That's all there really is to say about it. It's a great card. It's a very interesting design space to give Rangers quiver effects. People have been calling for a quiver for quite a while. And it's just kind of nice that because arrows have so much of a drawback to them in terms of can it be played from Arsenal. You can only run a certain number of them in the deck because you do need to add other cards and things in there. And when you run out of them, you kind of you're kind of screwed and you don't have a weapon that you can attack with. So arrows have so many drawbacks that it is right that they get this kind of support where they just get extra stuff to make up for the fact that you're playing arrows. But this is good. This is a good level of support. This will be a good card. And we will find out very quickly how good because people will just put it in their deck straight away. Now, moving on to the last card, which is this old bearded dude just kicking the hell out of someone in a ninja outfit, which I think is pretty cool. He's got all his ancestors behind him. Yet again, another win on the art front. This is a really interesting card because I think a lot of us ninja and former ninja players have kind of been saying, what are they going to do with Katsu when they start adding more cards with combo? So we kind of saw a taste of this in Everfest, where was it Dynasty? No, in Everfest, where they gave us cards that comboed with existing combo cards, and they also gave us cards that comboed with combo cards that already had a finisher, right? And that seems like a very solid design space for Katsu, because you don't want to give him more and more combo lines, because you can't play all of those combo lines. You have to play starters and finishers. It makes more sense to give him niche cards with interesting abilities that fit in around existing combat combo lines, so that he can play with those ideas and have that flexibility. So this is really interesting. So 2 cost combo. It's a rare, so it'll come in blue, red, and yellow. Combo. If a card with Gust Wave in its name was the last attack played this combat chain, this costs 2 less to play and has Go Again. And when this attacks, you may banish a card with combo from your graveyard. If you do, search your deck for a card with the same name, banish it, then shuffle. You may play it this combat chain. So, you are playing this after Gust Wave. Currently, the only card with Gust Wave in the name is Whelming Gust Wave, which is already a pretty staple combo line for Katsu. It is his signature staple combo line. It will be interesting to see if Mugen Release Whelming Gust Wave gets a reprint. I think based on this, I would expect it to, but they might just reprint Surging Strike, Whelming Gust Wave, and this, and not reprint the Super and Majestic. But I think you may as well. If Katsu's back in the set, you may as well reprint his specializations so that people can get into Katsu easier. Especially because there's a Katsu starter. I wouldn't be too surprised to see that having Mugen Release and Lord of Wind in. So how does that turn work? You're going to attack with a Kodachi. You're going to attack with a Surging Strike. You're going to play a Whelming Gust Wave. Then you're going to play a Bonds of Ancestry. Now, it is important that you can't play Bonds of Ancestry and then continue the combo line from Whelming Gust Wave, right? You can't. You've already done it, right? But there are plenty of strong cards you could get that deal extra damage. Okay, so you could just get something like a Pounding Gale as a 1 for 5, or a Flusterfist as a 0 for 4. You could, of course, depending on how they blocked the first 2 cards, go into a different combo line, right? You might have a leg tap in your arsenal. You might banish a blue Rising Knee Thrust and get a red one, and then come in with a Rising Knee Thrust leg tap, right? I mean, that's perfectly fine play. This is a 3-card play. If you've got a leg tap at Arsenal, you get a Rising Knee Thrust for 3. That's 4 cards. And then you might still have... will you have a card to pitch for Katsu? Let's just work through this. So, you have Surging Strike, which you pitch for. You have Whelming Gust Wave, which you don't pitch for. This is then free. So you've pitched a blue, so that's 4 cards. You have leg tap in Arsenal, that's your 5th card. And then you go and get Rising Knee Thrust. So you can't get the Hurricane Kick, you can't finish a second combo line. You could play a bit of a second combo line. And let's remember that if you add a Kodachi, that is 1, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5, right? If you play everything. 1, 4, 4, 4, 4, 5, which is 10, 18 damage. That's not so bad. 18 damage off 1 blue pitch. That sounds pretty ninja to me. And of course, we don't know what other cards are going to go in there. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's a combo that works with Bonds of Ancestry. Something that's a finisher based on this. If there is a finisher based on this, my deck can contain Surging Strike, Whelming Gust Wave, Mugen Release, Lord of Wind, and Bonds of Ancestry, and whatever the finisher is off Bonds of Ancestry. I'm playing 9 Whelming Gust Waves, 9 Surging Strikes. I'm going all in. I'm going to play Windy Katsu. I'm just going to go 100 wins. I'm going to do everything, right? Because this card just makes all of those combo cards better. If I have 100 wins, for example, I have 200 wins, and I go Bonds of Ancestry, 100 wins. That's perfect, okay? It's really, really good. And it plays with everything Katsu wants to play with, right? Now, and also, this card doesn't have to hit to get its effect. Okay, it's important we just underline this. When this attacks, I get a free card with combo when I attack, which has Go Again. And they've probably already had to block the Whelming Gust Wave. I mean, come on. And let's not forget that if I go Surging Whelming, and they say, okay, well, I blocked the Surging, so he can't fetch a Whelming. People do that. It's a perfectly good choice against Katsu. I block the whelming so he can't draw a card. Some people don't block the surging, they'll block the whelming anyway. It kind of depends how many of the surging or whelming I've seen in the discard pile. And then I've already committed my block for the turn, right? In my head, because against Katsu, you're kind of like blocking at the right time and then attacking back so you have reach, because you don't want to just block Katsu out every time. You want to block the card draw from Mask of Momentum, and then you want to block the Katsu trigger ability so he doesn't go combo off on you. So you've blocked already by the time this card is played. That's why it's so good. And then once they've fetched my next combo piece, right, I've played this card after you've already blocked. You have to choose, well, do I block Bonds of Ancestry? Well, probably not, because it doesn't have a non-hit effect. And then after that, I can Kodachi you again, maybe, if I have the resources, and then I can play the card I got with combo and threaten a Mask of Momentum draw if it has go again. So if I fetch 100 wins with this, and then I Kodachi you and play 100 wins, I mean, what are you doing? Am I just getting your whole turn then at that point? Which means I can do something similar again the next time. I think this is a really good card. It's interesting. I would have thought for an ability this complicated, it would have been a Majestic. But that kind of hints to me, maybe there's a Majestic finisher for this combo line. I'd like a Majestic finisher that brings back Ancestral Empowerment. That would be really fun. So we have one last topic to talk about for this video. Thank you everyone who has stuck around. Our last topic to talk about is what the hell do we think stealth does? Right? Now, for me, I think stealth is going to be something that stops people defending, right? In some way, right? Now, I originally thought maybe stealth is just the command and conquer text, so they can't play defense reactions. But then I thought, well, actually, that doesn't really make sense to me, because stealth is kind of about stopping people from seeing the initial attack coming. Whereas reacting is something you do after you see you've been attacked, right? After the stealth. So I don't think it'll do anything with defense reactions. What I think stealth might be. Okay, now I've got one crazy idea and one simple idea. The crazy idea is that attacks with stealth get played face down, and we'll say all the attacks with stealth have a set attack. So imagine if every attack with stealth is just 3 attack, right? So my opponent knows he can block the stealth attack with a 3 block, and it will be blocked unless I have an attack reaction. But he doesn't know what the on-hit effect of the stealth card is. So just imagine that every single stealth card is 3 attack or less. Right, so my opponent knows he can block it with 1 card, but the card attacks face down. So he doesn't know what the on-hit effect is until we reach the reaction stage. Right? So then I'll flip it in the reaction stage, and then he can play reactions to stop me, but he won't know what on-hit he's blocking. He'll just know that he's blocking the attack. And maybe there'll be one Majestic one, which is a 4, just to spice things up a bit, So that could be it. It could be the attacks with stealth get played face down on the combat chain. They don't flip up until the start of the reaction phase, but they're not like 1 for 7s or something that's hard to block. They'll be 0 for 3, maybe 1, 0 for 4, and the rest will be, because they'll be coming red, blue, and green. They'll be red, blue, and yellow. They'll be, 1, 3 or less, every time. That's one prediction. I feel like that would be really fun and really interesting. I don't necessarily know how strong it would be if every single card with stealth has to be below a certain power. But it would definitely be an interesting mechanic, and I think it would keep your opponent guessing. And of course, if there are ways to buff those, we've already seen 2 attack reactions that buff those, or there are ways to give them different on-hit effects and stuff like that. Like we've got Switchblade as the title for our assassin hero, so she might be doing something with switching attacks or switching weapons. That would be really interesting. My third suggestion for stealth, which is a lot more simple, is just if this attack is played from Arsenal, it cannot be defended during the defense step, right? So if you play it from stealth, so from Arsenal, i.e. your opponent doesn't see it coming because it's face down, then you've done the setup, and because you've done the setup, your opponent can't block it with cards from hand, for example. Something like that, right? And that is a powerful effect for assassins, because if I am going Spider's Bite, you're blocking with cards from hand or you're blocking with equipment, and then I play an attack that can only be blocked with equipment, suddenly it becomes a lot more of a problem, and suddenly my poisons become a lot more likely to apply. So I think that's probably the most likely form for stealth, is that if a stealth card attacks from Arsenal, it can't be blocked with cards from hand. And then they would also, again, not have a lot of power, because the whole point is they don't have a lot of power. Because if you make cards that can't be blocked from hand and you give them like 6 or 8 attack, you're just asking for aggro problems. But that's where I think it will go. I mean, there's an interesting one mechanically, which I think would be quite fun, and then there is that option. The Codex of Frailty, more dual cards. Well, we've seen Frailty now, so the ability... So I get to put an attack action card from my graveyard face down into my arsenal. If my opponent already has one, then great, okay. I have to discard a card, that's fine, I'm planning for that. And then I get to get a Ponder token for me, which is I draw a card at the end of a turn, and a Frailty token for my opponent. So this is essentially like against weapon-focused heroes, like Ninja or Warrior, really, really strong, because I can get my really good attack action back, like a Disruption, like a Command and Conquer, for example. And then I can also say, oh, by the way, your weapon attacks are -1 next turn, and if you play something from Arsenal, it's -1 as well. I think Frailty is a really strong token. We've seen the strength of this rounds on me, and this isn't as strong as that, but it is a very strong token. So it'll be interesting to see how it gets used. Anyway, I am very hyped for Outsiders. I've kind of not fallen in love a bit, but I really like Assassin, just as as someone who used to play slower Katsu decks, where it was like I'd stab you with my weapons, I'd do a single attack, I'd spend a lot of time blocking. Assassin is really appealing to me because it's control options mixed in with interesting attacks. It gives you a lot of flexibility to change your playstyle, respond to things. I'm finding it really fascinating. So obviously a set that has Assassin in and Ninja, I'm absolutely here for that. I just hope now that Katsu is back, I'm not as disappointed by the Ninja cards in this set as I was by Fi. I've kind of said it multiple times, like how disappointed I am with Fi, because that's not what I see in my head as Ninja. I don't see Ninja as just chucking loads and loads of attacks on the board, trying to do go wide with as much damage as possible. To me, Ninja was always Katsu. It was always, I'm going to set up, I'm going to make my combo happen, I'm going to chain these punches and kicks together so that it does what I need to do and get stronger. Not just... And if I had a little bit of that with Spreading Flames, but it's not to the extent that I need it or want it, because in the end, the right choice with Fi is just to play all of the free attacks that say 0 for 3 and just go with an Art of War. Whereas I always hoped that Ninja would be a bit more interesting than that. And I think it has the scope to be with design like Katsu, where it doesn't with design like Fi. So I'm happy for Assassin, I'm happy for Ninja. Ranger isn't my thing. Arrows just annoy me. I've pretty much made that clear. I know people will disagree. That's fine. I will say, though, while I would like more non-human heroes in the game, and I'm a bit disappointed that, Azuri is human. We don't know what Arachne is. I assume he's some sort of disfigured human. But can I just say that, Riptide... dude is half drowned. He's covered in barnacles. There's a fantasy concept in a lot of games called a drowned man, where someone dies at sea and their body gets taken over by a parasite or half eaten, and then they start to grow crustacean bits and barnacles and all this kind of stuff. And he has hints of this here, especially up here and kind of in his Lost Planet. They might just be pox sores or something like that, but kudos to LSS for not everyone does not have to be an attractive anime bait hero, right? Her hair changes so much from thing to the other. She gets dreads. Also, some people think she changes skin color, and I can kind of see it. I can genuinely kind of see it. It's a question mark. I can definitely see why some people are a bit sus on that one, being like, wait a minute, is she's Asian here, but she's black here? I don't understand. Anyway, I'm really happy with Riptide. He just looks really interesting. Like big, chunky fisherman dude, loses his hand, becomes a ranger, starts trapping people, and he has this giant, like, harpoon metal chain link bow thing on his back. You can kind of see the string there, and maybe that harpoon is an arrow. So does he have like this giant metal bow that shoots arrows? I mean, come on, guys, come on. So Ranger's not for me, but this guy looks awesome. So I'm really excited to see where he goes. I don't have Ranger cards anymore. Well, I do, but I've been trying to sell them. Maybe when Azalea comes out and they're finally good, I can finally sell all my Ranger cards. That's it. Anyway, Uprising preview season has started. I am super hype. Happy to, new sets always reignite my spark for the game. And you guys know I have been taking a break over the past few months. I did go to a Pro Quest. It was fun. I played Arachne, so I didn't do particularly well. But my family and my sister's new baby kind of dropped in with a surprise visit the day before. So my plans to sit down and research the meta and build a meta deck didn't really come through. So I just ended up picking the deck that was closest to being built, Arachne, chucking some cards in and just going and playing a bit of Fab, having a bit of fun, just not putting any pressure on myself to win. I wasn't going to be going to Baltimore even if I did well. I don't really need more gold foils. So, I wasn't really putting a lot of pressure on myself to win, just enjoying playing the game. And Outriders is going to bring me back into the game. Again, I can tell because I'm already enjoying the new cards and the ideas and the heroes. So I'm super excited. It's going to be a great year in Flesh and Blood. The only thing really missing, and I've kind of said this and I'll say this again, is we need announcements of European callings. We're not getting a Pro Tour. A lot of people are sitting there being like, what the hell am I doing this year in Fab? A lot of people are saying, why am I mean, they're not going as far as to be aggressive, but why am I playing a game that isn't rewarding me, rewarding my commitment with a solid understanding of when I actually get to play it? It's the same problem we've had for a while, and it's the same problem that needs to be resolved. Now, organizing events is difficult, right? Finding venues, guaranteeing times. But what's worse? People not knowing that there's a European calling coming up in April, or you saying there's a European calling in April and you just haven't sorted a venue yet, right? Just publish a schedule. Let us know what's going on. It's not, you're an events company. My company runs events, we run telecoms events, but, we tell people the date of our events 5 months before our events happen. Because we need to get sponsors and we need to get people to show up, Now, I'm not saying you need that for a hobby, a TCG, but, we definitely need to know. Like, I need to know. I need to know how much holiday days I'm keeping. I need to plan out which ones I'm going to. I kind of said it last year, but I think I've doubled down on it this year. If I don't feel like I'm given enough notice to go to an event and book cheap tickets and, have the time off, I don't think I'm going to go. I found it very stressful last year. This is the people who listen this far get to hear my actual thoughts on things. But I actually found it very stressful last year, kind of like the constant like hype of, this event. And I realized that the only reason that feeling actually kept coming around wasn't because we were constantly going from event to event to event. It was because every time an event got announced, I was like, well, we have to go. But the events were being announced so close to when the event started that it was kind of like, we have to go and we have to book it now. And it just felt really hectic. And then I ended up spending a lot more holiday than I thought I would because I, spent holiday on events that actually, if I had known the full schedule, I wouldn't have gone to. Like if I had known there was a calling in Utrecht that was a CC calling, I wouldn't have gone to the Uprising pre-release calling in Madrid. I would have saved my money and had a much nicer weekend in Utrecht, and I would have had holiday days free to take a few days off in Amsterdam and the Netherlands. I love the Netherlands. And then we ended up in a situation which really wasn't very nice, where I wanted to keep going with Fab because I was really enjoying myself. It's a hobby. It's supposed to be enjoyed. But the only way that I could do that was to take days away from my holiday that I had booked out at Christmas. And I had 2 weeks booked out at Christmas to go home and see my family. And I don't need to book that time off because I can work from Ireland, and I have my laptop. I can work there on the days that I'm there, so I don't need the time off. But the difference between being back home with the days off and not is huge. So I ended up stealing more days than I was comfortable with from myself, in essence, and putting them towards Fab. And I feel like that problem was caused entirely... Not entirely, no, that's unfair. It was partly caused by my hype, because it was the first competitive year of the game, and I wanted to go to every Pro Tour and everything like that. And in the end, if I'd qualified for Worlds, I probably would have gone to Worlds, despite it being West Coast and very expensive. But, I feel like the only way we're going to... I mean, firstly, the second year doesn't have that same FOMO for me. I wouldn't have gone to Baltimore if I had qualified. I deliberately tried not to qualify for Baltimore. I will go to probably 1 or 2 callings, depending on where they are. And I'm happy to have a more chilled out year in Fab. I feel like now is the time for Fab to relax and become a consistent part hobby, rather than something I'm constantly chasing and trying to, do everything for, because that's not really possible. So it's going to become a consistent hobby, and I'm just going to enjoy it at my own speed. But I need LSS to publish a calendar for that. It's a simple requirement. I'm a 32-year-old man with commitments. I need to know when I'm going to be spending my holiday, when I'm going to be taking my breaks, when I can tell people I'll come and visit. I need all of these things, and I can't do them until we have a concrete schedule with at least, I don't think it's unreasonable to ask for at least 3 to 4 months notice on a major event that's going to require me to travel to a different country. I don't think that's unrealistic. I would be happy if at the moment we just had a loose schedule that just said European calling 1 Q2, European calling 2 Q4, Nationals Q3, like Pro Tour, Worlds Q4. Like, I would be happy at the moment if it was just callings in these 3-month blocks, and then it just got more granular 3 or 4 months before the start of that quarter. But I just don't like being in a situation where there's only one Pro Tour, I don't know what's happening in Europe, and I have no idea how big a deal this one Pro Tour is, because we aren't getting one in Europe, and I don't know what we're getting instead, and whether I should just be upset, disappointed, or annoyed, or okay. I don't know how I should feel, because I don't know what I've been told. I haven't been told anything. So we're just in this frustrating situation where we don't need to be. And I'll be honest, I'm not the only person who said it. Few people I've seen from Europe, high-profile players, don't want to go to the US for another tournament, and they're frustrated because they don't know when their next tournament is that's made for them. Because it doesn't feel like the Pro Tour in America, being back in America after being at Worlds in November, they don't really want to turn around and go back to November to the US in February, and they're kind of saying, well, when's the next thing for me? And they're getting frustrated because they don't know when that is. So I'm not the only person feeling this. A few people have said it. LSS need to start getting their ducks in a row and giving people good notice on when these things are available. So, Outrider preview season. I'm super excited. It's going to bring me back into the game. It's going to be great. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you all soon.